When Titus came down from the Mount of Olives with his men, and we can look off and see the Mount of Olives right over our left shoulder there, when he came down and he came into this area to destroy it, that must have been an unbelievable sight to see also.
I think, it was after 2 months of bloody battles, and the people here, for them it was very important, the temple itself, and they saw the Romans coming with boats and shoes into the place where the high priest has to put off his shoes when he gets in, and the fire later, they burned the whole porticos around, and we can imagine.
When General Titus and the Roman army destroyed the second temple and dispersed the Jews to the four corners of the earth, they did so in fulfillment of the prophecy in Deuteronomy chapter 28, verses 63 to 68. And ye shall be plucked from off the land, whither thou goest to possess it. And the Lord shall scatter thee among all the people from one end of the earth even unto the other end. And there shalt thou serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood or stone. And among these nations shalt thou find no ease, neither shall the sole of thy feet rest. But the Lord shall give thee there a trembling heart, and a failing of eyes, and a sorrow of mind. And thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, and thou shalt fear day and night, and shall have no assurance of thy life. In fact, there is a monument to the fulfillment of that prophecy. The Romans erected an arch in the city of Rome after the victory of General Titus and the Roman army over the Jewish people and the destruction of the temple. The first and second temples were at the center of Jewish life for God's chosen people. From the very moment that Abraham and Isaac went on Mount Moriah, through the 2,000 years of the offspring of Abraham all the way down to the time of Christ and the establishment of the second temple by King Herod, that Temple Mount has been the most sacred spot on the earth for the Jewish people, and it has been at the center of controversy throughout that entire time. Having traced the history of the temple past during the periods of the first and second temple, we'll look at the temple program in prophecy as we talk with the people at the center of preparations to build the temple future. We'll be viewing the men studying the priestly duties, the priestly garments being prepared, the implements for service in the temple, the model of the third temple, and the cornerstone and those who plan to erect that stone to start the building of the third temple. But first, a discussion with Jewish scholars, Israeli archaeologists, a former chief rabbi of the state of Israel, and biblical scholars as it relates to the controversy surrounding the location of the building of the future temple, the third temple. Randy Price and Tommy Ice have written a book on the preparation and building of the third temple and have done extensive research on where this future temple should be built.
Israeli scholars have different opinions concerning the location of the temple in Jerusalem. Archaeologists such as Dr. Dan Bahat, the director of the Western Wall tunnel excavations, and Dr. Meir Ben Dov, chief excavator of the southern wall of the Temple Mount, both place Solomon's first temple and Zerubbabel and Herod's second temple at the traditional western site on the Temple Mount. This is the site today occupied by the Islamic Dome of the Rock. Dr. Asher Kaufman, a physicist and longtime student of the temple, proposes an alternate location in the northeastern corner of the Temple Mount. While no one in Israel at present may agree on the precise place where the temple was built in the past, we know without a doubt when the temple will be built in the future. According to sacred scripture, the temple predicted by the prophet Ezekiel in the last 9 chapters of his book will be constructed in Jerusalem on the Temple Mount. Immense topographical changes will be necessary to accommodate this temple, which will be 1 mile square in dimension. The Bible presents an order of prophetic events that will climax with the building of this temple.
As Randy just mentioned, there is a controversy as to the exact location for the third temple, when it will be built, somewhere on the Temple Mount. In your investigation, and I remember back in 1984 when I had the privilege of going into the Western Wall tunnels with you. You were doing some of the work there at that time, and you took me all the way back to the columns that would have led to the Temple Mount area. And I remember as we were walking along and talking and looking at things, you at one point showed me a location that was closest to the Holy of Holies. And all the excavations that you have done, have you been able to gain any more knowledge of where the Holy of Holies, its location might be?
No, not at all. I think that those things that they know, it's not right, because the temple was higher than it is now, and you cannot come to any idea. We know around, we can say that it was around the Dome of the Rock, but not more than this. We cannot know exactly the location of the Holy of Holies.
We believe that the Dome of the Rock, or rather the rock under the Dome of the Rock, is a precise site of the Holy of Holies. Namely, this structure which you see here, which is the temple itself, I mean the heart, or rather the core of the temple, because you see the temple is comprised of many courtyards around, it stands precisely on the same place where the Dome of the Rock is today, and the stone of foundation which is sheltered there is actually the stone which comprised the Holy of Holies. Now, you of course can ask me with different opinions, like the one which is stated by Dr. Asher Kaufman, but we do not accept it, because even if you look here, he believes that the Dome of the Holy of Holies was somewhere here, which you see does not agree anyway with any possibility of arranging the Temple Mount and the temple and the courts around it with what we know today of the Temple Mount.
With the reunification of Jerusalem in 1967, Dr. Asher Kaufman, who is a physicist, not an archaeologist, had a desire to contribute to the discussion of the actual location for the future temple. Dr. Kaufman found information in ancient Jewish records revealing that sacrificial blood from the altar in the first and second temples had drained into the Kidron Valley to the east of the temple towards the Mount of Olives.
I think I spent about 2 months investigating theoretically whether one could trust this piece of information from our ancient records that the blood drained into the Kidron Valley. And when I was convinced, I came to the realization that perhaps this particular record called Tractate Midot, Midot meaning dimensions, the dimensions of the temple, that this would enable me to work out where the temple stood. And the idea came about of what I would call temple landmarks. The Kidron Valley would be one of the temple landmarks as how to locate the temple from our ancient records. And coming across this concept of temple landmarks, I asked myself, is it possible that in this particular section of the Mishnah called Tractate Midot, whether there's another landmark? And in fact there is, the Mount of Olives. And in the book of Numbers we're told about the red heifer ceremony, which was a very rare ceremony in ancient times, whereby the high priest or the priest would look towards the temple and sprinkle blood towards the temple. And that was the important way of working out where the temple stood. With this idea, it came about that the Dome of the Rock could not be the site of the temple.
Asher Kaufman's input to the temple location basically goes against the traditional spot for the Holy of Holies underneath the Dome of the Rock. Instead, it's a cupola to the northwest of the dome, referred to as the Dome of the Spirits. This location is based upon Kaufman's investigation of the alignment with the Mount of Olives, the red heifer sacrifice, and the Holy of Holies. And so the debate goes on. Rabbi Shlomo Goren, the former chief rabbi of Israel, has done some of his own research on this matter.
Actually, I started digging just beneath the Temple Mount from outside a few years ago, and we were very close to the place on the Temple Mount where the Holy of the Holies was located. The Holy of the Holies is not within, is not beneath, or is not located within the Dome of the Rock. The Arabs, the Muslims, they are mistaken. This I made my measurements just right after the Six-Day War, and I came to the conclusion, 100%, it's not 99%, but 100% conclusion that the Holy of the Holiest is outside of the Dome of the Rock, to the west side of the Dome of the Rock.
We cannot know exactly the location of the Holy of Holies.
Do you believe that archaeological finds will ever assist in determining where the Holy of Holies was?
I think that nothing can help in this because the temple was higher than the platform in our days. So it was destroyed under the level of the temple at that time. So how can you come to a knowledge? You just need the signs from heaven maybe, but otherwise you can't look and find anything.
Indeed, a sign from heaven will answer the controversy as to the exact location for the third temple. That sign is yet to come. As Randy stated, we do not know exactly where the third temple is to be built, but we do know when the third temple will be built.
Yes, according to Scripture, the next great event on God's prophetic calendar will be the rapture of the church, made up of both believing Jews and Gentiles. Shortly after this, human history will be characterized by a period of spiritual deception and worldwide distress, especially for Israel, called the time of Jacob's trouble. We believe that this period of tribulation will commence with the battle of Gog and Magog, described in Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39. The coming of Messiah will conclude this terrible time and will begin a glorious era of universal peace under the rule of Messiah. It will be at the inauguration of the kingdom that the Messiah will rebuild the temple of Ezekiel's vision.
In the background is the call to prayer by the Muslims from the Temple Mount. We began this video at the entrance to the Temple Mount, in the center of the activities of those on the fast day of the Jewish people, Tisha B'Av, which commemorates the destruction of the first and second temple. This is only one example of the intensity of activity in preparation for the building of the third temple. Ready to rebuild. That seems almost like an understatement when you look at the intensity of these preparations. The temple past is in perspective. The temple future is in prophecy. We come now to the temple present. The stage is set, the actors almost in place, and the curtain is about to go up. In a recent interview with Gershon Solomon, head of the group called the Temple Mount Faithful, who have the cornerstone and want to erect it on the Temple Mount and start the construction of the third temple, Gershon shared with us his vision from atop the western wall overlooking the Temple Mount.
You know, when I'm so close to the place, I feel that I am not here. I am in the clouds and inside the place. You know, I see the first temple, which King Solomon built it. I don't see the Dome of the Rock here. I see a strange thing here. I see the first temple, I see the second temple, and more than this, I see the third temple, which will be rebuilt in this place exactly, very soon, very close to our time. Maybe tomorrow, maybe after 1 week, but now, and you and I and all the generation will have the big privilege to come to this place in the original situation, the biblical situation, when the temple is here, and the temple will become again a center of Israel, a center of the redemption of the people of Israel, and then all the nations from all the world will come and pray, as God said, my house will be a house of praying for all the nations in all the world.